I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir. He's the Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thank you, Jim.
You're very busy today as we talk. You're at a conference. Can you maybe tell us what it's about and what's trying to be accomplished there?
Yes, I've been in Vancouver, downtown, at the Nation to Nation Forum on Aboriginal business. We're seeking to connect Aboriginal leaders from around British Columbia with businesses, with government, people who are trying to explore what's beyond reconciliation. You know, for many years now, we've been getting to grips with sometimes not too savory past of Canadian practices or relationships between the settler people and the Aboriginal and Indigenous people. A lot of mistakes made in the past. A lot of reconciliation needs to happen, and a lot of it has happened. But the next step is really what the current generation of Indigenous leaders is talking about today. They're saying, how do we advance our local economies at our First Nations territories? How do we create jobs? How do we prosper like the rest of society? You know, how do we get away from often the poverty that is endemic in our First Nations?
Right, and a lot of Aboriginal territory, all these resources are right there. They'd like to see them develop, but no doubt they want to be able to maintain their traditional way of life and not have their environment and social means disrupted by that development.
Sure, and that's exactly what they're saying. We can have both. And so if you adopt the long-term First Nations thinking, traditional ways of approaching these problems, they think we can do that. You know, we've had, I was on a panel with a speaker from Kitsalis, from the Terrace area, the Chief Joe Bevan, and he announced some benefit agreements today with the British Columbia Aboriginal Affairs Minister, John Rustad, actually at our conference. 3 benefit agreements that relate to LNG development in Northwest BC. And that's how his nation is getting into the economy that the rest of us are already in. And so it was really something to celebrate to see the chiefs come out for this. So we were talking about all of the challenges. You know, what are some of the challenges to traditional thinking for First Nations and others as well? So there is a will to make progress rapidly today, and it is so needed.
And it seems to me, if you do the dialogue first, you don't have the resistance, the protests to certain things like pipelines that happen when you don't sit down and go for lunch with somebody. Just make it that basic. Well,
you know what? There was a great phrase. We've heard a phrase often heard in political circles of how do you get to yes? And that's I think a good phrase. It's something that needs to happen. Getting to yes, let's build that project. But what we heard from one of our advisors was, how about we start with getting to maybe? And that's the first step when you're building relationships before even there's anything on the table. And that's the big takeaway. It's the question that everyone was asking, what do we do? Well, you work to get to maybe. You do it by not coming and saying, look, here's what we're going to propose to build. Here's how much, jobs you're going to get. Here's, what we heard from the First Nations leaders themselves was that although those parts of project development are really important, nothing is more important than building the relationships earlier than that.
And of course, too, they want to see sustainability. It's fine if you have 100 jobs for 5 years, but what happens after that project's done? Is there a stewardship? Is there a restoration plan? That kind of thing.
Yes, and that's exactly the kind of example that was talked about. How do we avoid those outcomes, which, frankly, the past is full of examples it can be pointed to of things not turning out the way that in 2017 we certainly all wish they should have turned out, but they didn't. So how do we ensure the future is what we want it to be.
And of course, we have that horrible incident where the Tilling Pond collapsed, and we were just lucky that nobody was killed. Are people still concerned about if you're going to build a dam and contain mining waste in it? How do we know it's safe?
These are the technical questions of mining, but they are experienced as social problems. And one thing we heard from one of the band counselors from Williams Lake Indian Band, it was a really interesting point he made, is that they're going through changes in their economy there. There's not as much of the beetle kill wood going through the mills there. Therefore, there's fewer jobs in forestry. Now, there will be forestry jobs in the future, but there'll be fewer of them, it seems. So what do they replace that with? They would love to see some mining happen. And, when the Mount Poly mine reopened after that disaster, that meant 300 people going back to work, and that has a huge influence in the local economy. Clearly, those jobs are desired by the trade unions, by the First Nations, by the towns up there. They drive the BC economy. Those benefits flow right into the towers of downtown Vancouver and the warehouses of suburban Vancouver. Drives the economy. So we need those, but we don't need them at any price for the environment. And that's something loud and clear I know industry has been hearing.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, technology and mining might be one of the most rapidly advancing areas in technology. Can you tell us about some of the new things that people are chatting about?
Well, the big thing right now is disruptive innovation in mining. I was in Toronto recently at the PDAC, the big mining exposition, biggest in the world, and that was really the buzzword on everyone's lips. How do we confront the big problems, whether it's safety problems, efficiency, profitability, finding the concentrations of ore that result in viable mines, making the socially challenging areas operate better outcomes. These are all areas that are subject to disruption. And so I love the example right now of market for lithium, the lightest metal there is, which is integral to electric vehicles and all kinds of other electric devices in future and the present. There's a lot going on in lithium markets and demand.
Somebody asked me once, is there enough lithium to meet the actual demand for all these electric vehicles if they're going to be built?
Well, one of the interesting questions there is how many electric vehicles will be built. And you've got a bit of a hype cycle, it seems, according to recent report from the Financial Post. There's more electric vehicles going to come into existence if you ask the lithium mining industry as compared to the auto sector. So right now it's a little bit of an unknown. There's less than 1 million of those plug-in vehicles in the world right now, which is not really a very large number of them. But the projection is that 8 out of 10 vehicles by the year 2030 will be electric vehicles. So if that does come to pass, it will surely mean there has to be a massive supply of lithium available. Is there enough lithium for that? It would seem so. There's so much lithium down in Bolivia, Chile. That's where about 70% of the world's known lithium reserves exist right now. So they have a relatively cost-effective way of getting it out, and I think right now they're enjoying the benefits of this very valuable commodity.
Are they exploring for lithium in other areas of the world?
Oh yeah, Australia, China. We've got a little bit in Canada. The U.S. is a modest amount. Argentina, Brazil, over in Africa, Zimbabwe in particular. There's a little bit. There's not much in Canada. It's really quite a small resource. But I think for the foreseeable future, we can expect South America to be the dominator there.
Are the people in places like Chile and Bolivia welcoming this exploration for lithium?
I think that's an interesting question. There's been some friction there. They have this saltwater process of extraction. It can take a long time for this evaporation process they used to complete. It's a great big challenge for the companies. It has its own environmental prices. Sometimes we think about electric cars as being a big solution to environmental problems, and indeed they do remove tailpipe emissions. But you can't forget that you pull one end of the string and the other end moves, and in this case, we're creating the potential for environmental harm from mining. So, how do you get better at all of these things? That's the challenge for mining. That's why the disruption philosophy that we're seeing right now, to take every process, question it, see if it can be done better, more inexpensively, cleaner. That's what it's all about, and lithium's a great example of that.
I hear there's a new process that actually will recover lithium from old oil wells in places like Alberta. Yeah,
and there's a lot of innovation there. There's a Vancouver company that it's American Manganese Incorporated. They're looking at recycling lithium from spent batteries, because right now the battery people are not all that successful in recycling batteries or getting a lot of the lithium out of them. So this company has been quite innovative in finding ways to commercialize a lithium process to recycle it. So I think that's an interesting story to watch.
Yes, talking to American Manganese, they say one of the things that makes recycling their batteries great is that the car batteries will be the same shape and size, so they don't have to do with variations like you would find in laptop computers and so on. So you can recycle the container, because that's not going to change, take the guts out of it, recycle what's inside of it, and basically pack it back in.
That's smart. A lot less waste that way.
Is that the way a lot of things are going now, trying to make things not wasteful, don't throw it out even when you're mining, trying to reuse products right there on site?
Well, there's a phrase now, zero waste, which is being adopted by the mining industry, where, just as the phrase suggests, nothing is wasted. And all the processes are closed loop, and you have ways. You look at natural gas refining, the Encana company in northeastern BC has been investing quite a lot in water recycling. So they have got processing plants that recycle all the water that goes into hydraulic fracturing and put it back in to the system, so that every time they drill a new well, they've got that water being reused. And it costs a pretty penny to put those installations in, but once they're in, they are improving the environment by a huge degree.
I remember a time, and it wasn't that long ago, that if you had a pulp mill in town, you could smell it miles away. Effluent was a big problem. Now there's zero emission, and you would be hard-pressed in many communities to even know that they're in the pulp and paper business. And at the time, they said, when it started, you couldn't do it. I guess they're saying the same thing in mining now.
Well, there's been so many changes. Take pulp and paper. Wasn't it W.A.C. Bennett who was questioned about the smell from pulp and paper? He said, that is the smell of money, my friend. And so it was. But the process has changed. It used to be that operators would dip their thumb into the big bucket of pulp and taste it to see if it was ready. Well, they brought in some other processes that replaced that through technology. They had the control room. They had gauges and precise ways of consistently doing those measurements. That's the story of our resources in BC, because we're constantly making them high-tech, more innovations in that space. And it's one of the interesting drivers of the economy in BC. And a lot of people, when they hear high-tech in Vancouver, they are quite excited about it. I'm excited about it. But the real story isn't what you might think. Even though there are gaming jobs and software programming jobs, and those are great to have. But most of the action is in building things that are needed to do work. And a lot of that work in BC, of course, is natural resources. So it's building the gauges, building the equipment, building the parts that are used in all of these processes and building them well so we can export them to the world. It's a really interesting part of high tech in British Columbia. So, we've got these pieces there. It's why I think Canada is one of two countries, Canada and Australia, that are the global leaders in everything to do with mining. 5 of our universities are in the top 20 of the world's top mining universities. And that's because we have all of these people in our institutions who are doing that work and have the knowledge and are teaching the next generation, what they need to know. So, mining is the most modern practice imaginable, even though it is as ancient as humanity.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Abin Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Abin's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abinresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, is there a lot of cooperation between universities when it comes to developing new high-tech mining stuff?
There is, and I think that's where the collaboration starts. We've got the Center for Innovation in Mining that has been doing a lot of work with data. It's estimated that there's $19 trillion worth of exploration value that resides in mining data that's already been produced, that's sitting in files. If you look at the work of the Canada Mining Innovation Council, they are just right now starting a program. It's called Innovating to Zero, and this is the zero waste we've been talking about. And they are bringing together a group actually in Toronto in June. They're going to be creating this forum to bring together the industry, sponsored by Deloitte, who are doing a lot of advanced work in this area, to see how we can, get to that point. And it's a great story for everyone to understand who's not in mining, because we want to know that we're always getting a little bit better. Every step, we take needs to be cleaner and sustainable. And so mining has got frankly, a reputational problem that it needs to solve, because we need mining and we need it to be good for the environment. And how do we do that? So there are Canadians leading the way for sure in this.
Yes, we get the image of the blackened faces of the coal miners with the big, tall, black smokestack belching out this black toxic soup. Can you actually use coal and not produce these toxic materials? Well,
for a long time there's been different uses of coal to extract, liquid fuels from it. So, there's that. I think when you look at the frontiers of carbon capture, there are those who dismiss carbon capture as an expensive folly and it's never going to pay off. But you can also find those who are making investments, billions of dollars, like in Saskatchewan. There's a big investment there. I think Alberta has got some carbon capture. Australia's looking at it. We're seeing in Japan, that they haven't abandoned coal at all. Even though we think of Japan as a pretty green country, they're actually using this, supercritical coal plant for energy generation. And they think that that's an acceptable thing to do for the environment. So coal does have this reputation, but if you look what is actually happening, we're going to have to, get our energy from energy-dense chemical sources like fossil fuels for a long time to come. But we have to do it responsibly, and we also have to get better at it. So we're going to see the high-quality coal that we have in Canada, and BC in particular, that's used for metallurgical uses, which is really the best in the world. It's the highest standards. It's what is needed wherever they make steel. We're going to see that used for a long time into the future. So It's interesting to see President Trump in the U.S. Do a photo op for the coal miners. That's a interesting one, to have the regulations that were put into place for coal mining roll back, supposedly to allow there to be more coal mining. But, when it comes to that kind of coal mining, the thermal coal, it could be that the markets in the U.S. have already moved on, that even if President Trump has made those changes, it might not really stimulate the coal sector in the eastern part of the USA. So I think that's one to watch if you're thinking about where coal fits into our energy future.
Stewart, it might be a little while before we talk to you again because you're off to India. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm attending next week and speaking at the Global Natural Resource Forum in New Delhi, and I'll be talking about disruptive innovation, one of my favorite topics in mining. And I've actually made a documentary. It'll be on our website after I deliver my speech in New Delhi next week, and we'll have it at resourceworks.com. Anyone can go and see it, where I've talked to 15 experts in disruptive innovation in mining and gotten their ideas, put them together into this little film, and bringing that story to India because we think that a country like India, it's a billion people. They are moving into the global middle class. People know they have Netflix down there. They have TV, of course, and everyone knows how everyone else lives. And in India, they would like to live as we do, and that's a very challenging environmental thing. But it is where the world is moving. So the challenge is, how do we use these materials efficiently? How do we mine them and get them and process them in a clean way, sustainably for a long time to come? It's a monumental challenge, and they are coming to terms with it in India, and we think that they will look at our Canadian practices with real interest. Is there,
it seems to me almost now, a very natural connection between Canada and India?
Well, culturally, of course, the Lower Mainland of BC, there's 250,000 individuals with South Asian roots. So we have those connections that go back well over a century, and I think that's one reason why what you say is absolutely the truth. But I think also the British Commonwealth has been a binding factor. We have similar traditions and legal systems and understanding because of the Commonwealth that we have an outlook that is differentiating amongst the 50 or so Commonwealth countries in the world. We're really a little, a group of like-minded people. So there's multiple reasons why Canada and India should and could and will work together.
Stewart, good luck in India.
Thank you.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. His website, resourceworks.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. You can find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our very popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or for our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.